In 2017, the Australian Government created the Independent Aged Care Workforce Strategy Task Force to ensure that the aged care workforce would meet the needs of older people both now and into the future. Over 8 months, the task force developed a strategy for growing and sustaining the workforce, which resulted in the presentation of 14 strategic actions which were documented in A Matter of Care, Australia's aged care workforce strategy. In 2019, the Aged Care Workforce Industry Council was established to support the implementation of the 14 strategic actions, the second of which is the Aged Care Voluntary Industry Code of Practice. It's designed to support aged care providers to continually set the bar higher every day and aspire to provide better services to older Australians than they did the day before. Louise O'Neill, CEO of the Aged Care Workforce Industry Council, is here to talk about the code. Thanks so much for joining us, Louise.
Thanks so much for having me along, Nicola.
Firstly, can you tell me who the Aged Care Workforce Industry Council is and a little bit about the role that you do?
Sure. So the Aged Care Workforce Industry Council is a unified industry-led body. It's the first leadership group of its kind in the aged care sector in Australia. It was established under a Strategic Action 14 of A Matter of Care, and it is made up of providers, 9 provider directors and a consumer director and a workforce director. We work with government and with providers and workers and with older Australians, their families and carers to implement A Matter of Care and to drive workforce reform across the aged care sector.
So the code, how was that developed?
So the code is Strategic Action 2 of A Matter of Care. It was taken up by the council as part of its work in 2019, and there was some work done with Leading Age Services Australia, and who also worked with the Older Persons Advocacy Network to do some early consultation over 2019-20 with consumers, particularly around what the code represented. The council then published the code on its website. We published it in October of 2020, and we did some further consultation with the peak organisations across the sector and leadership organisations. And then Minister Richard Colbeck, who Minister for Aged Services, launched the code with a number of industry leaders and myself in Parliament House on the 5th of February this year. So that was a really good time to be putting the code out and saying, you know, here's something from industry that industry is going to lead to improve quality outcomes in the sector.
So tell me a little bit more about the code. It's voluntary, there's 7 principles. Can you explain the intent of the code, and then we might talk about how organisations can pledge to it and implement it?
Yeah, so the intent of the code is it's an aspirational code. It is voluntary. It is not regulation. So the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission is in charge of regulation in the aged care sector. The code is based on continuous improvement by providers against those 7 principles. So everything from, you know, the first principle, which is around consumer-led and community-driven values. This is a real underpinning, if you like, of the 7 principles of the code. It is incredibly important that providers are listening to the voices of their consumer and their broader community that they're delivering their services in to be able to understand how they actually need to improve, or the ways in which that consumers are expecting things to change or be delivered in their supports and services. So it's integral to what needs to happen in terms of their first planning principle under the code.
And principle 2 is living well and integrated care models.
Yeah, and again, this is, you know, very much in line with the way that aged care is evolving and the innovations that are happening in models of care, reflecting, you know, the huge increases in home care packages that are coming and you know, greater delivery of services to people individually in their homes or in the community, and what are the innovative integrated models of care that people are seeing evolve or hoping to see evolve to enable them to stay in their residents or in their local community, and listening to voices of consumers and the workforce about how do you deliver that and what improvements can an organisation make in that space will be really important in developing their plan here.
And principle 3 is board governance.
So board governance, you know, we know that there is, under the Royal Commission, a lot of commentary around governance of the sector, and board governance needs to, reflect the community of that the supports and services are delivered in, reflect the expectations of the business models and the professionalism that's required in delivering services. And so it's incredibly important to increasing standards, if you like, or quality of an organisation by getting that board governance right.
And Principle 4 is best practice sharing and industry benchmarking.
Yeah, and look, the whole process of the voluntary industry code of practice is ultimately around the industry being able to benchmark itself. So being able to publish a plan and being able to publish your outcomes against and achievements against that plan at the end of each year really enables the providers to be able to look against each other across the sector and say, how are we going? Oh, what are they doing that's actually improving, seeing improvements through their code, and how do we actually lift ours in different ways here? So it becomes a very collective way of looking at it. It's not it's a less competitive benchmarking, if you like, and a more collective or collaborative benchmarking. But it also enables the consumers and workers to be able to look at it and say, is this the type of organisation I want to go and work for or get my services from?
And Principle 5 is education and training, including workforce accreditation.
Yeah, and look, under the matter of care and under the Royal Commission report, a huge amount of inference on the importance of improved education and training, and the importance of getting your workforce right, and we will see accreditation practices come into place through the government, but this is around then an organisation, how are they going to work with their workforce to ensure that they're getting the adequate training and supports around that, and that when accreditation is available, that they are enabling their workforce to do that as well. And that's a high priority in their care delivery.
And Principle 6 is workforce planning.
So again, workforce planning is knowing what you're delivering and knowing who you need to deliver those services. As people evolve their services, they'll need to reflect this as in their plans as well, the changes that they may make from one year to the next around new integrated models of care, for instance, or the greater numbers of home care packages and how they need to plan for the future for that. It's incredibly important. This whole VICOP process, or the code process, enables people to actually really start to forward plan. And I think that's a great thing if you do it as part of your business process every year.
And then the final principle is proactive assurance and continuous improvement.
Yeah, and continually improving. The Quality and Safety Commission and the standards of the Commission are around this is the regulations you're required to do, but it doesn't seek to always be pushing people on the continuous improvement road. And the code is around how do we continually improve what we do? What's the next step we need to take next year? And how do we assure ourselves that that is actually happening in our organisation or across the industry? And we hope that these models will evolve where people start to share that information across industry around how they're continually improving and what sort of assurance mechanisms they have to actually benchmark that, if you like, and to be able to establish where they've got to or where they're going to.
So the first step is to go to your website and pledge.
That's correct. So if providers can go to our website, which is acwic.com.au, make a pledge. We can then publish their logo under those organisations that have pledged. There's currently around 60 odd organisations that have made pledges, or over 60, but it represents a significant number of organisations in the sector. I think just about 50% of aged care services. And in making that pledge, we publish their logo and then they can start to develop a plan. We expect that people will develop their plan through a business plan, the usual business planning process, and we've suggested that people run these plans each year from in the financial year when business planning often occurs. So we've got some draft plans on our website for larger organisations and smaller, but we're also developing more tools as we go through this current consultation process to help support providers in developing their plans.
And providers can email you if they've got feedback on the code as well, can't they? And we'll put our email address on the screen, your email address on the screen, to contact you if they want support as well with developing their plan.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we are very much open to having discussions with people. We've just been going through this consultation process, but we've also also got an open feedback process on our website against a narrative as well that talks about what the code process is, and we're inviting people to come to us at any time with feedback on the code or for questions, and we can have conversations or send them information. People can also make statements of support to the code, and that includes all of the peak organisations, the peak provider organisations in the sector, and the religious and charitable organisations, as well as a number of organisations that support the sector in different ways, through learning, through IT and other things, and who see value in the code and its intent to improve quality outcomes for older people. So we've also got an opportunity for people to make statements of support if they're just individuals in the community or workers. We don't publish their names, but we have a little counter on our website that shows you how many people. And I think the more people that show value to providers around this, the more providers will uptake it as well. And workers and consumers have a great power in being able to actually, work to support the code in that sense.
I can't wait to see the improvements that are made, and I suppose from an aged care perspective, what difference we can make to people's lives.
Yeah, look, I think the value of the code is immense. It's not regulation, like I said, the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission holds a stick and will tell people when they're doing the wrong thing and say you must do this right. But this is about actually making these, really deeply thinking with your workforce, with consumers, about what is of value to improve here, and how do we actually lift our games in places where maybe we're not aware of, providers might not be aware sometimes about really what consumers think or workers, and sharing the ideas about how we actually do that to improve as a sector. And the more that people do it across provider organisations, the more providers can then benchmark against each other and say, oh, okay, and they can also learn off each other. The continuous improvement feedback loop comes from your own community, but it also comes from looking across to the other providers and being able to start to share more. And I know that our directors, who are CEOs of provider organisations, have all sort of said this is actually an opportunity for us to showcase things we're also already doing in terms of network sharing of continuous improvement across, say, a region where they are already doing some great work in that space, but now being able to articulate it and work with their communities around how do we actually take that next step and improve even more. So we're a bit excited about it.
Louise, thanks so much for taking the time to come and share with us the work that you're doing, and I can't wait to celebrate the success of the industry with the Voluntary Code of Practice.
Thanks, Nicola. It's been my pleasure, and I'm very happy to come back and have more conversations about this as we see the outcomes of it.
So I really look forward to that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you.
We really encourage you to pledge to the code as part of your commitment to the future of our industry and older Australians. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nicola Burton for Altera Learning.